Hello my amazing people, and welcome back to my channel if you're back. If you are new, welcome to my channel. I'm Shayna, and today I'll be talking to you about the case of Bailey Mundell-Clemons. Bailey's sister reached out to me and asked me to consider covering her case on my channel, and I am absolutely honored to do so. Before I get started, I would like to issue a trigger warning. This video will include themes of domestic violence, and I know that's not suitable for every viewer. If you are not in a place to hear that type of story today, I encourage you to join me in a future video. Whether you decide to stay or go though, I will be providing resources for anyone, whether it be you or someone that you love, who may be in an unsafe domestic violence situation, in the description box below. This is quite a heavy one, and the purpose of this video is really to tell Bailey's story so that people know who she was, what she stood for, what kind of mother and sister and daughter she was, and to also provide resources for anyone who may be in a situation where they could use a helping hand. So, without further ado, thank you so much for joining me today, and let's get started. Bailey Mundell-Clemons was born on August 7th, 1984 in Paola, Kansas to Leonard and Irene Mundell. Everyone loved Bailey. She was truly one of a kind, and she had an infectious smile. She was smart and witty and kind and caring and fun, and you knew that you'd have a good time the anytime Bailey was around. And one thing was for sure, you could always count on Bailey to say whatever was on her mind. Bailey was a Southern girl who loved all things outdoors. She actually loved horses and riding them and spending time with them. And she was known to everyone to just be warm and fun and adventurous. And she was literally always smiling when she walked into a room. You could not help but feel her warmth. She was just so unique and truly one in a million. If there was anyone that you had to bet on to rise to the occasion, it was her. She was iron-willed. She did not shy away from doing anything just because it was difficult or it wouldn't come easy. And this strong will that she had went hand in hand with her adventurous nature. She was never bored. She got along with people from all walks of life and always found something to do. There was no such thing as a stranger in her world. When Bailey was a teenager, her father remarried a woman named Sue. Leonard had custody of Bailey and her older sister, Tashia, so the three of them actually packed up, moved to Springfield, Missouri, where Sue and her daughter Jenny were, and they became a blended family. It was interesting from the start. You had Bailey and Tashia, who were just used to having each other their whole lives. And you had Jenny, who was a little younger, and she had never had to share her mom before. It was always just her. It was incredible because Bailey was really the glue for everyone. When they first started living together, Jenny and Tashia didn't mold that well, but Bailey was like, her personality just melted like butter with whoever. She could literally get along with anyone. So her and Jenny became tight, and Bailey was able to help Jenny and Tashia become close as well. So Jenny, while she was their stepsister, she was absolutely a real sister. And Jenny is actually who reached out to me to cover Bailey's case. Bailey found out in 2003 that she was pregnant and expecting a baby boy, and she was over the moon excited. She was so excited to be a mother and to show this little boy all the things she loved to do and to figure out who he was going to be. She wanted to explore this adventure of motherhood. Bailey adored her son. She named him Caden, and they did everything together. They went fishing. They were always outdoors. They did horseback riding. And to this day, Caden says that Bailey is his absolute best friend because they were so close. They had an incredible bond as mother and son. Things ultimately didn't work out between Bailey and Caden's father, but being a young woman still at this time, she was focused on being a mom, but she also liked still hanging out with her sisters and her friends. Jenny actually tagged along with Bailey quite often. They did a lot of things together. Again, Jenny was younger, so Bailey was kind of the cool older sister. And Jenny remembers they would hang out at this bowling alley parking lot. That was kind of the cool thing that the people in the area did at the time. They would just chill, talk, hang out in this parking lot. And that was the common grounds. Everybody knew this was the hangout area. And she and Bailey would be there. They had friend groups that they associated with. And this is where, in 2004, Bailey came across a guy named Clemons. Aaron was born in 1983 and grew up in Ozark, Missouri, and generally speaking, he was a normal guy. He seemed to be liked by his friend circle, but there were, on the other hand, people who felt that he was rather obnoxious, a little annoying, and Jenny actually knew Aaron since he was in an adjacent friend group, but she didn't think too much of it at first. When Bailey met Aaron and the two of them started dating, she had an okay perception of him. Nothing profound stuck out in her mind. But her perception, as well as the family's perception, would eventually grow to change over time. There was nothing amiss in the very beginning, but you know how when you introduce someone that you're dating to your family and they can kind of pick up on things that you don't necessarily see yourself. Your family kind of sees through the facade a little bit better than you can when you're dating. That's what the situation was like here. Like, Bailey's family welcomed him with open arms. They were kind and loving to him. They treated him well. But they just always kind of had this hunch that something wasn't quite right. Like, they weren't sold on Aaron being the guy for their Bailey. Aaron did have a little bit of trouble holding down a job for a long time. So, for example, he would jump from doing electrical work to doing work for a moving company, and his patterns were a little erratic at the time, but the family of Bailey just chalked this up to him being a young man. He was still in the process of figuring it all out, and they gave him the benefit of the doubt, but they would see over time that his patterns and his inability to really hold a job for an extended period of time lasted as the years progressed and their relationship continued. Bailey's family's one and only concern was that she was happy. That's all that they cared about. So whether their opinion of Aaron was the best or the worst, they ultimately wanted Bailey to be happy, and it seemed that she had found that happiness in this relationship with Aaron in the beginning. But they kept their eye on the relationship as time went on, and they noticed some patterns. They noticed things like Aaron putting Bailey down, and they noticed other things that they just kind of felt uncomfortable with. And the dynamic of the relationship slowly began to mold and change. But a year after Bailey and Aaron met, in 2005, they gave birth to Bailey's second son, Aaron's first son, and his name was Gannon. And again, Bailey was absolutely over the moon, just like she was when she had Caden. She was so excited to be a mother to a newborn baby once again. But it came as a shock to everyone when Bailey's dad received a frantic phone call from her shortly after she gave birth to Gannon, where she expressed to her dad that Aaron had actually thrown a phone at her. It struck her in the face, it hit her in the nose pretty hard. And she was upset because he threw a phone at her while she was holding her newborn baby. And this was really troubling for her, but she didn't know what she wanted to do at this point. She did ultimately decide to leave Aaron for a short period of time, and after she took some time to think about it, she did decide to reconcile with him. And at this point, the family's skepticism about Aaron just turned into a mistrust, and they didn't want to see Bailey be with him anymore after this point. They weren't feeling good about the relationship, and they could tell that she really just wasn't happy in the situation anymore. She did decide, though, to stick it out in the relationship, and the two of them eventually had a baby girl in 2007 named Emma, and they decided to tie the knot and get married in 2008. Now, over the years, the domestic violence that started after Bailey gave birth to her second son in 2005 progressively got worse. I mean, the house was chaotic. They had 3 children, and Aaron was erratic, and Bailey was just trying to hold it all together. She wanted her family to be a unit. She wanted her kids to be in the same house with their father. And even though she was constantly in this state of dealing with emotional, mental, and physical abuse, she wanted so much for this to work. And she always decided to see the best in Erin, even when she wasn't the most happy and even when things weren't going well. Her ideal was for her to keep her family together, and she stayed with Erin over the years, even though things progressively, like I said, got worse over time. Bailey's parents consistently offered for her to come stay with them, but she always declined. And to everyone on the outside looking in, Erin seemed to be a good father. He seemed to be attentive and loving to his children when friends and family were around, but we would later find out that he was quite authoritarian in nature. It just goes to show the facade that was being put up for everyone who really thought that Erin was this great father. But one thing you could never second guess about Bailey was her role as a mother. She was an incredible mother. I mean, she adored all of her children. She was working at the time. She was working at Lowe's, which she actually really liked her job. She had good relationships with her coworkers, and she was the glue to the family. She was a strong person. You can't tell me that who she wasn't strong. She was working and she was dealing with a chaotic household, the normal chaos of children, but also the extra layer of chaos at the hands of her husband. So just to know what turmoil she was dealing with on a daily basis just makes you really think about the kind of character that she had. She had to be a strong person, and she was. And no matter what she went through, she was always an incredible mother, an incredible sister, and an incredible friend, an incredible daughter. I mean, Bailey deserved the world because she gave out so much. In March of 2010, Bailey decided to get an order of protection against Erin due to a domestic dispute. He hit her, he slammed her arm in the refrigerator, and he hit her in the face as well. And she decided that that was it. That situation pushed her to the point where she decided to call the police. Erin was arrested and charged with domestic violence against Bailey. It pushed her to a point where she was ready to leave. At this instant, she knew that she had to do something because it was getting to a point where she was no longer safe. But Erin actually had to attend a 16-week course called Hit No More, and this was to help him perhaps recover from his abusive tendencies, for lack of a better way of putting it. And this was court ordered, but Bailey decided that this program that he was in was helping him, and she wanted her husband to be in her children's lives. She actually decided to revoke the order of protection against Erin, and she did take him back. Bailey's family was very hopeful that Erin would actually change this time. They were hoping that the program that he was in would encourage him to be better and to be more loving and to be kind and to be a better husband and father. Bailey was hopeful too. She told her family that while he was working still on the verbal and emotional abusive aspects of his character, he was doing a good job, I guess you could say, at no longer being physically abusive. And she told her family this to ease their minds, but we would later find out that that was not true, that he was actually still being very much physically abusive. But Bailey just wanted to put her family's mind at ease because she knew how hard this was for them. Obviously, it was hardest for her, but she knew how it was affecting them. And her sister Jenny actually worked at a domestic violence shelter at the time. And Jenny always told Bailey about different resources of what she could do to get help, of the options that there were out there. And it was heartbreaking because they saw what was happening with their own two eyes. They witnessed the effect that it was having on her. But when someone's in that situation, you can't make them leave. All you can do is provide them with the resources and hope that they decide to make that decision on their own. And Jenny was always hopeful. She always told her, you don't have to stay. There's options. There are options available for you. There are people who love you, who will help you, and there are places you can go. And Bailey always listened, and she always said, yeah, I know, I know. But ultimately, time and time again, she would decide to stay. And it was hard to grapple with for the family because they knew that they couldn't force her to go. They wanted nothing more than to just take her under their wing and shelter her from what she was dealing with. But she had to come to a place where she was ready. Bailey was finally ready in September of 2013 when she filed for divorce against Aaron Clemons, and she was sure this time. And it was unfortunate because when she told Aaron about this, he actually made multiple threats against not only her, but also the children. And this put her in a really hard situation where ultimately she ended up taking him back again. And I don't know, what her thought process was at the time, if she was just thinking, okay, I'll let him come back in, but we're not actually still together, or what the situation was. None of us were there for that dynamic. However, we know that he moved back into the house, and his threats and his manipulation was working again because he ruled by fear, and it was just really unfortunate. Bailey would do anything to protect her children, and I guess I'm just imagining how it would feel to have someone threaten my children, and none of us can say what we would do in that situation, right? You can sit here as a bystander and speculate about what you might do in that situation, but ultimately none of us were in her shoes, so we don't know what we would have done. Bailey's parents actually owned the home that she and Aaron and the kids lived in, and they were renting it from her parents. On June 16th of 2014, Bailey's stepmother received a call stating that the house was on fire. I mean, absolutely engulfed in flames. Emergency services arrived on the scene, and distraught and concerned neighbors were telling them there's a family that lives there. And through the neighbors and through the family members that started to show up, they all figured out and told police that they were concerned because they didn't know where everyone was at this point. They didn't know if the whole family was in the house. They didn't know if they all had gotten out safely. Nobody knew where anyone was in that moment. The only things that they knew for sure was that Bailey's oldest son, Caden, was safe because he was actually with his father's side of the family on this day, so he was okay. And the other thing that they saw was that Bailey's car was pulled into the garage, but it was pulled in the garage as if whoever had pulled it in there was in a really big rush, because it literally was driven into the garage and on top of everything in the garage. It was like zoomed in there and then someone left right away. Later this same day, Aaron contacted 911 letting them know that he was involved in the fire and he was very badly burned. And emergency services arrived. He was taken away in an ambulance to the hospital, and he was by himself. Gannon and Emma were not with him, and neither was Bailey. While in the hospital, Aaron told the medical staff that the fire was caused by him and that his wife was inside the house when the fire was set. So of course, police were called down to the hospital to speak with him. So Aaron indicated that the children were safe and that they were at a nearby park in Stone County. And he told the police that Bailey died before the fire, but that he didn't know how. And he told the police that he taped her to a pole in the basement, talked to her for an hour, went upstairs to get ice, and then when he came back into the basement, she had passed away. After this point, he intentionally set the house on fire. But he's telling police that he doesn't have any idea of how she passed away when they initially questioned him, which to all of us obviously makes absolutely no sense. Bailey's family knew from the very beginning that he most likely murdered her and that he was lying by omission. He clearly was leaving something out. How did she come to be taped to the pole? Why was she taped to the pole if you didn't actually hurt her? Right? Things that just don't seem to make sense, but he wasn't saying anything else. So when Aaron is in the hospital getting treated for the burns that he sustained from the fire, around the same time, the kids actually, who were at a campsite by themselves, 6 and 9 years old, were spotted by other campers who they talked to and told them that their father was there, but now he wasn't, and they didn't know where he was, and that they were by themselves. So the other campers called for help, and Child Protective Services as well as the police arrived on the scene to try to figure out where the parents for these two children were. But it didn't take very long for the police to make the connection that these two children were the children of the parents who lived in the residence that was involved in the awful fire. Police had a very difficult time removing all the charred debris away from the home after the fire. But on June 17th, the day after, a very grim discovery was made that a burned body was in the basement of the home among all of the debris and all the water from them extinguishing the fire. These remains were soon confirmed to be that of Bailey Mundell-Clemons. Bailey was taped to a pole around her ankles, hips, her jaw, and her forehead. She also had a belt wrapped around her neck. She had a sock in her mouth that had been used to silence her, and there were 2 gasoline containers near her body, as the basement smelled very strongly of gasoline that had very clearly been used to start the fire. While Emma and Gannon were very young, police really wanted to talk to them because they knew that these 2 children probably were the only eyewitnesses of whatever happened in the house that day. And Aaron was omitting information, so they knew that their only option to figure out what went wrong here was to talk to the kids. Gannon and Emma confirmed that they actually heard everything that happened on the morning that their mother passed away. They told police that Bailey and Aaron got into a very bad fight on Saturday morning when Bailey returned home after a night out with her friends the Friday night before. Aaron was angry about what he thought was an unreasonable time for her to return home, and this fight escalated from yelling to actual fighting, with Bailey doing her best, trying her hardest to protect herself from Aaron. The children demonstrated for authorities what they saw Aaron doing to Bailey through the use of dolls. They demonstrated how Aaron pulled Bailey down, sat on top of her, beat her, and strangled her. One child said that they heard Bailey say, "I'm bleeding," and Aaron replying, "It's going to get worse." Bailey had experienced a lot of abuse at the hands of Aaron Clemons, but when she got home this Saturday morning, she could tell that this was more severe than normal and that she was not safe. So she screamed for her kids to run to a neighbor's home and ask them to please call 911. But when she did this, Aaron screamed at the children not to go anywhere, to go back into their room. And given that Aaron ruled by fear in his household, they did not know what to do. They wanted to help their mom, but they were afraid of their father. So they went in their room, they locked the door, and they listened to everything that happened. The children who were afraid and confused remembered hearing Aaron beating their mother and dragging her into the basement, and they even heard him unrolling the duct tape to put it around her body against the pole. After everything went quiet and the fighting and the yelling stopped, Aaron came back up to retrieve them from the room and told them to pack a bag because they were going camping. Aaron took the 2 children camping on Saturday, where they stayed all through Sunday, and the children of course asked where mommy was, and Aaron told them that she was okay, that he had taken her to work, and that they were just going to spend some quality time together. So they spent Saturday afternoon, Saturday night, Sunday, all day. And then when Sunday night comes along, the 2 children are asleep, and Aaron, having had the time to think about what he wants to do, knowing that Bailey is still in the house in the basement where he left her, he decides that he is going to leave in the wee hours of Monday morning, Sunday night basically, before sunrise on Monday, set the house on fire, and try to escape and get back to the campsite before the kids woke up, which would provide him an alibi for where he was at the time that the fire would have started. But given that he has sustained burns as severe as he did from this massive fire, he had no choice but to get medical attention. And at that point, as we know, he partially confessed. Aaron was arrested and pled guilty to second-degree murder, 2 counts of armed criminal action, kidnapping, second-degree arson, and 2 counts of endangering the welfare of a child. The prosecutor initially was seeking the death penalty for Aaron, and for the most part, the family was on board with this idea. The only thing about pursuing the death penalty was that in order to do so, the children had to testify. They had to take the stand against their father. And it was 2 years that had gone by from the time that the incident took place to the time that the trial was about to begin. And Bailey's family really had to consider if they wanted to put the children in a situation where they had to face Aaron. Because over the 2 years they had done counseling, they were working hard to process all of the trauma that they experienced that night. And they were doing so well. They were making progress, and they were doing better. They missed their mom. Of course, they were heartbroken about what had happened, but they were doing so much better and finding some sense of peace in the midst of all of this. Bailey's family decided that it was best to keep them away from Aaron altogether. So of course, that removed the possibility of the death penalty. The family decided to accept Aaron Clemons' plea, which resulted in him receiving life with the possibility of parole. And throughout all of the proceedings, Aaron showed no remorse. No tears were shed. He didn't have a sad look on his face. He seemed very disconnected from what happened, and he didn't make eye contact with Bailey's family. And to this day, there has been no remorse shown for the egregious murder of Bailey. Absolutely no remorse. Aaron was sentenced to 30 years in prison, and he must serve a minimum of 85% of this sentence before he is eligible for parole. So after about 25 years has passed, he will be eligible for parole. The family, however, is confident that he most likely will spend the rest of his life in prison. The family of Bailey overall is satisfied with his outcome. They believe that he will be in prison for the rest of his life. He has never attempted to contact them, which I'm not sure why it surprised me, but I just figured at some point over the years he may try to contact them, but up until this point he has not. And the children are doing great, which is perhaps the silver lining in all of this. They obviously miss Bailey, but they have been doing trauma-focused therapy, and they're doing great in school. They're well-adjusted children. The loss of that relationship is devastating. It would be to anyone, especially a child who needs their mother. But the bravery that she instilled in them is obvious. It's very clear. And I'm just glad to hear that they are doing okay. That is incredible to hear. Bailey's family has a Facebook page that they run. It's basically to remember her life and her legacy, and to also offer resources for anyone who may be suffering from domestic violence. They are more than happy to help provide you with resources, help you find resources in your area. So again, I will link that down below. That will be in the description box for anyone who would like to go and just keep up with the page. It's very active, it's very current, they update it regularly. The family wants you to know that if you or anyone that you know is in a situation where you are dealing with domestic violence, you are absolutely more than welcome to reach out to them, and they will be so happy to provide you any resources that you may need. I also would like to add in here that the National Domestic Violence Hotline can be reached at 1-800-799-SAFE. That's again 1-800-799-SAFE or 7233. You also have the option of texting the word START, S-T-A-R-T, to 88788, and an advocate will be available to help provide you with the appropriate resources if making an actual phone call is not ideal for you. My goals for this video are to, of course, spread awareness about Bailey. I wanted people to know who she was, and I wanted her life to be remembered, and I hope that I was able to do that today. I also want to make sure that you know that if you or anyone close to you is struggling or is in a place where you are not safe, or you don't feel safe, or you just need to find some resources out there, there is always a way. There are always options available to you, and I will link a couple in the description box down below. But I wanted to spread this story because unfortunately domestic violence is quite a common occurrence, and oftentimes people in domestic violence situations feel trapped. Asking for help is an act of bravery, not an act of weakness. I firmly believe that, so feel free to use any of the resources in the description box below. If anyone that you know is in a domestic violence situation, please encourage them to seek out the help, because it is there, it is available. This case is still very raw and very real, and will probably feel recent for the family for the rest of their lives. So that being said, I do ask that all of my viewers be very mindful of your thoughts in the comments below, and I thank you for listening today. This one is near and dear to me. I get a little bit nervous anytime that I'm talking about anyone, but this one, for some reason, I was just walking around my apartment and kind of stalling because sitting down and having this conversation is difficult. But I wanted to make sure that I played a very small role in people knowing who Bailey was and remembering her, how she should be remembered. I would like to thank you so much for joining me today. As always, you know what I'm gonna say. If you made it this far, you are loyal, you really are, and I appreciate you. I hope you have a wonderful morning or afternoon or evening, depending on what time it is when you watch this video. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Peace.